Now, A8 is a little bit more practical and realistic in that A8 is directing you to create a tool that is used worldwide all the time and generates millions and millions of dollars of cash flow for the people who use it. And that tool is called an email extractor. An email extractor is what spam artists use to scrape web pages and pull email addresses out, which then go into a very large database, and then they are sold to people who want to email you about free Viagra or protein shakes or whatever the thing is every day that you get lots and lots of spam about, real estate opportunities or whatever. So the email extractor takes a piece of text and it searches in that text for email addresses. It pulls them out, it cleans them up, and then it puts them into a list. So there are a few functions that you will produce as a result of this. And so the file that you will start with is this one here, the starter template. And this is what it looks like to start. Okay, so it's got two strings, strtext1, strtext2, that contain email addresses and other text. And then you also have a list of email addresses that you'll use for one of these. In this project, I'm not asking you to create a fully functional application. I want you to focus on writing the three functions that are here. Now, some of these functions will use the other functions as part of the solution. So if you develop these in order, what you'll find is that this third function uses both of these first two as part of its solution. But, so this is what the text looks like. And as I'm scrolling through this text, if you're watching the text as I scroll, what you're probably doing is sort of inadvertently looking for email addresses, right? How do you know when you see one? Like you see an email address right now, right? You feel pretty confident about it, that that's a valid email address? Okay. Pause for a second and think about what you're doing in your head. How are you determining whether that's a valid email address or not? What's the first thing you're looking for? @ sign. That's a dead giveaway. Every email address has an @ sign smack dab in the middle of it, right? Okay, so that's the first thing you're looking for. And your program is going to mimic this, right? I'm going to go through these strings word by word, and I'm going to say which one of these words or these collections of smaller strings has an @ sign in it. That's the first thing. If it doesn't have an @ sign, it's not an email address, right? And then the next thing you want to do is you want to start applying other rules. Like what else? What else? What did you do after? When I said, is that a valid email address? You started doing something else in your head. What are the other rules that you were thinking of? What else does an email address always have? What? The website. So this is the domain, is the proper name. But everything after the @ sign has to be a valid domain. Domains can be a little tricky, right? Domains are usually something dot something. There's usually at least one dot after the @ sign, am I right? Always one dot, sometimes more though. When I first came to Bakersfield College, my email address was bmosley@bc.cc.ca.us because the domain for Bakersfield College, and our website was www.bc.cc.ca.us, stands for Bakersfield College.communitycollege.california.United States. That was before we were allowed to have bakersfieldcollege.edu. So there's a lot of different domains with a lot of different patterns. But what we do know is that it's going to be a collection of numbers, letters, and dots after. Is there anything else that is valid other than numbers, letters, and dots after this? Can you think of any other characters? A hyphen character is allowed in a domain. Yes.
I've seen some emails that they don't always have a .com. They have like a different,
Like a .us or a .online or, yeah. This is called the top level domain, TLD. And it can be at any one of, I think there's over 100 now. It used to be .com, .net, .edu, .org. There was just a few. And now we've expanded it, right? .vr, .live, .online. So it's not just 3 letters or 2 letters. It could be a whole word, but there's always, and it doesn't end in a dot. So if you're checking an email address and it's got a dot at the end, all that means is that you pulled it from the end of a sentence, and that's a period. So that can't be there. You got to clean that off. So if I take this and I use split to split these by spaces, then what I'm going to get is some of this kind of thing, where I've got an email address with crap stuck to it. So I have to figure out or think about, how can I figure out where the email address ends, and how can I get rid of everything that doesn't belong? So if it's at the end of a sentence, it might be a period stuck to it, but there might be something like this. There might be, let's see, here's one with a period at the end of it. So I've thrown you a few different scenarios here. This one is my favorite, because when you split that sentence, all of that comes back together, and there's a lot of garbage there. There's letters, these are valid characters that could be in an email address, but in the middle of it, there's a couple that aren't. So, and you can look at it, you could look at that and tell me that the email address, without any question, without any hesitation, you would say, that email address is dave@hotmail.com, right? I'm sorry Dave is stuck in 1995, but hotmail.com, dave@hotmail.com is that email address. But how do you teach the computer to recognize what you know intuitively? So that is the problem. So what are the solutions for these? So we've got one function that takes in a string and returns a list of emails found. Now this list of emails needs to be clean emails, not emails with crap stuck to them. A function that removes duplicates in a list, which we just did, taking a list as an input and returning the list without duplicates. So it takes a list as I'm telling you what it takes as a parameter and what it returns. And then a last function that takes a string and a list. So basically it takes this, and it says for each one of these, is that email address in that string? Is bill@network.us in the string? Is George Smith at google.com in the string? So it returns that. And there's a few different ways to do this. But just to show you, here is, and I'm not going to show you my functions because that would be too easy for you, but a simple version. And these are not cleaned up yet. But so the first function here might return, let me print that, print li emails. So it takes this string as a function or as an argument, and it returns the emails from that string. So if I run that, oops, if I run the correct script, there we go. there are the emails that it grabs. And so this one I got to clean up, and this one I got to clean up, and then I'm good to go. So I need to modify that function, or that return emails function, to do a little bit more work. Now, if I want to remove the duplicates, so I have that list, and now I can remove the duplicates from that list. So there are I have two George Smith at google.com. There is my list with the duplicates removed. And again, those needed to be cleaned up still. And then the final one might produce something like this. So if I take that list, and it takes a text and a list, and it says for each one of those things in the list, what's there. So now let me stop the printing on these earlier two so we can just focus on what the last one does. So what it does is it goes through each email that it finds, and it says it's not in the list, it's not in the list, this one is in the list, this one is not in the list, and then it returns a false or a true for each email, whether it's in the list or not. Okay? So those are an example of what the input and output for each of those functions will look like for assignment 8.